Here's a plant that has yellow leaves but is not getting any fruit. This is what we call a tomato sucker shoot, and it is growing into a central stalk and will never become a tomato cluster. Now, if you don't remove these suckers, they will steal nutrients from your ripening tomatoes. And so today I want to show you exactly where to look, what to remove, and then what to do so that you can enjoy a huge harvest of tomatoes like these guys. They are so ripe, they are actually starting to rot away on the vine because we have too many tomatoes and not enough room. So let's begin. The first thing I want to check is whether or not my plant is getting enough nitrogen. When you see yellowing leaves on tomato plants, that is usually an indication of a nitrogen deficiency. But there are a few other reasons why the leaves may be yellowing. One of them could be that the soil is too wet. And so now, with all this rain we've been getting, a lot of people are experiencing root rot and therefore yellowing leaves on their tomato plants. Okay, so the best thing to do is always to dig around the plant and check out the roots. Are the roots healthy? Are the roots dry? If they are soggy and they smell bad, that's a sign of root rot. Root rot is going to make your plants wilt during the day. It is going to cause yellowing in the leaves, and it is going to make your plant produce very little fruit. There is no easy cure for root rot. The best thing to do is pull the plant out, chop off all the dead roots, and replant it deeply. Now, if your soil is too wet and you cannot improve the drainage, another option would be to grow your tomatoes in containers. I am seeing a lot of questions about why the leaves are yellowing and falling off tomato plants that are growing in containers. With container gardening, we tend to water our plants more often than we need to. In fact, one of the number one ways we kill tomato plants is by overwatering. Now, tomatoes really only need about an inch of water per week. And so what you can do is simply stick your finger into the soil. If it is moist, then your plant does not need to be watered again. Container-grown tomatoes are also very prone to nutrient deficiencies because those nutrients get washed away every time we run our hose. And so you can easily remedy this by giving your container-grown tomatoes a weekly feeding. Just take an organic tomato fertilizer and follow the directions on the package. Now, if you are watering your tomatoes properly and they still have yellow leaves, especially if they're older leaves, that's probably an indication that your plant just needs more nitrogen. Now, there are lots of ways to add nitrogen to your tomatoes. You can compost around your plant. You can use a nitrogen-rich fertilizer like blood meal or fish meal. Or you can simply mulch around your plant with grass clippings. Now, after you've applied that nitrogen, what you're going to notice is new growth will be much greener. But it is going to take about 2 weeks for that nitrogen to be absorbed into the existing leaves. And so if you fertilize today, do not expect to see an immediate change in the color of those older leaves. Okay, now we've talked about the 3 main reasons why your tomato leaves may be yellowing, but there's one other reason. That's a really important reason why leaves turn yellow, and that is if your tomatoes are not getting enough phosphorus. A phosphorus deficiency is going to cause the older leaves to turn yellow. But it's also going to cause the tips of the newer leaves to turn yellow. Now, the best way to remedy this is to work in some compost or aged manure into your garden beds. Now, when it comes to fixing a phosphorus deficiency the key is to apply a lot of organic matter to your soil. Okay, now I want to talk about blossom drop. Blossom drop is when your tomato plants have plenty of leaves and they're nice and green, but they're not setting any fruit. Now, the most common reason for blossom drop is inconsistent watering. When we water our tomatoes, we want to water them deeply, and then we want to let the soil dry out before we water them again. We don't want to keep the roots soggy. But what we also don't want to do is to wait so long that the roots start to dry out. And so the key is to monitor the moisture in your soil. And if you are noticing that your plant is wilting during the day, that is a good indication that it is time to water. Another cause of blossom drop is inconsistent temperatures. When temperatures rise and fall quickly, that can cause fruit drop on tomatoes. The best thing you can do is to plant your tomatoes in a location that receives some protection from wind. All right, the next problem we're going to talk about is blossom or flower rot. Blossom rot is a fungal disease that causes your flowers to shrivel up and then turn black. And oftentimes you'll find this happening on warm, humid days during the month of June. Now, the best way to prevent blossom rot is to space your plants far enough apart so that there is excellent air circulation. Now, if you have already started to notice signs of blossom rot, the best thing to do is to pluck off those affected flowers and destroy them. Do not compost them. What you want to do is you want to kill off that fungus immediately. Another thing you can do is to dust the area around your tomatoes with some sort of fungicide. Now I recommend using a fungicide made from sulfur or neem oil. Now, the next problem we're going to talk about is called cat facing. Cat facing occurs when your tomatoes are forming and the outside skin starts to crack and wrinkle. And oftentimes, you will see this occurring on the bottom of the fruit. Now, this is usually caused by inconsistent watering. Again, this is when we water our plants too little or too late in the day. Tomatoes need at least an inch of water per week. And so if you live in a dry climate like I do, what I recommend doing is installing some sort of drip irrigation system. The best way to prevent catfishing is to mulch around your plants. Mulch is going to retain the moisture in your soil, and it is also going to protect your fruit from direct contact with the soil. Okay, now we've talked about a lot of different things that can go wrong with your tomatoes. But I want to share with you my absolute favorite tip for growing big, juicy, flavorful tomatoes. And that is to plant tomato varieties that are suited for your climate. When you plant varieties that are better suited for your area, it's almost impossible to screw them up. They are going to taste better, they're going to grow faster, and they're going to produce more fruit. If you live in a cool climate with short, cool growing seasons, then the best varieties of tomatoes to grow are cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are going to ripen even in the coolest climates, and my favorite variety is Sungold. It produces tons of fruit and it tastes absolutely amazing. Early Girl is another great choice for cooler climates. And if you live in a hot climate with long, hot growing seasons, the best tomatoes to grow are heirloom tomatoes. Heirloom tomatoes are going to tolerate heat better. They're going to produce larger yields and they're going to store much longer than other varieties. My favorite heirloom tomato is Brandywine. It grows like crazy and the flavor is unbelievable. Cherokee Purple is another great good choice for hot climates. It's a beautiful tomato with an amazing flavor. All right, I hope that helps. And remember, no matter what problems you encounter with your tomatoes, stay positive. You're gonna get through this and you're gonna get a harvest. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe. And as always, happy gardening.